Well, hello everyone. Thank you for participating in the Office of Private Health Partnerships webinar on high-risk pools. Today we'll be talking about briefly the background of the Oregon Medical Insurance Pool and the Federal Medical Insurance Pool, also referred to as OMIP and FMIP. We will be talking about the differences in eligibility between the two pools, including the differences in the funding, rates, and benefits of each of those plans. I won't go into the application a whole lot because that is detailed in a separate webinar which will be archived on our website. So I encourage you to take a look at that as well. So OMIP, a little background. OMIP's been around for about 20 years. Current enrollment is a little over 14,000 people. Of those 14,000 people, 85% of those are medical eligibles. In other words, those individuals with a pre-existing medical condition. The other 15% are portability eligibles. Those are individuals who generally have exhausted their COBRA and do not have a commercial portability option available. If we look at OMIP's enrollment over the last 5 years, generally fairly steady between 14,000 and 16,000 individuals. You will notice though in 07 and 08 you see a rather abrupt rise and abrupt fall. That can be explained by the Family Health Insurance Assistance Program. A number of individuals who were enrolled in OMIP received a subsidy to help pay their premiums through the Family Health Insurance Assistance Program, or FMIP. And for those of you who are familiar with that program, you may remember a actual budget constraint that was put on the FMIP program by the federal government in the spring of 08. What happened then is the FMIP program had to transfer several thousand individuals that were on that program over to the Oregon Health Plan. So that's why you see an abrupt drop in OMIP's enrollment during the spring of 08. So a little background on the Federal Medical Insurance Pool. This is a program that was enacted this year as part of the Patient Protection and Affordability Act. Any applications received in the month of July by OMIP will be reviewed for eligibility in the FMIP program. If they are determined eligible for FMIP, they'll be placed there. If they're determined not eligible, then they'll be reviewed for eligibility in the Oregon Medical Insurance Pool. Both the Oregon Medical Insurance Pool and Federal Pool end at the end of 2013. This is when carriers will no longer be allowed to deny individuals for health coverage based on pre-existing medical conditions. We're projecting 2,000 peak enrollment in the Federal Medical Insurance Pool and serving 4,000 over the life of that program. Now, the federal government actually offered each individual state the ability to choose whether they wanted to administer the federal pool on their own or have the federal government administer it for them. 30 states are currently contracted or contracting, in the process of contracting with the feds to operate their own pool, while the other 20 states have opted to have the feds administer that for them. Oregon obviously is moving forward in administration of the federal pool on its own. Our governor sent the letter of intent to administer the federal pool on April 30th. In just a little over 2 months, we were able to iron out all of the details and actually get a contract in place with the federal government. One thing that I would like to point out, and this was not just our state, this was virtually every state that expressed an interest in operating the federal pool on their own, was the assurance of no state financial liability. All of the states that were entered into agreement with the feds by contract were assured that the state will not have a financial liability for this pool. Now, for those of you who may have clients outside of the state of Oregon, I encourage you to go to healthreform.gov. On that website, you will find an interactive map of the federal high-risk pools throughout the nation. You can click on any of those states and you will be able to find information on the rates, the benefits, as well as the application process for each state out there. So a little bit about the FMIP eligibility. First of all, the individuals must have a pre-existing medical condition as part of their eligibility requirement. This is actually a requirement that pertains to both OMIP and FMIP. The way to satisfy this eligibility requirement are actually varied. First of all, an individual, if they are declined for individual coverage in the commercial market, they will get a declination letter. That declination letter will serve as meeting the requirement for having a pre-existing medical condition. Another way is to have the individual mark one of the conditions in the medical condition list that is in the application itself. If they can do one of those two things, that will satisfy that eligibility requirement. Now, there are two other requirements listed here that pertain only to FMIP. These do not pertain to OMIP. That is, the individual has to be uninsured for 6 months and a U.S. citizen or lawfully present. I won't go into what lawfully present means because you can find the actual definition and details on that in the OMIP member handbook and application. Now, because of these last two eligibility requirements, we are estimating that about half of the enrollees that would otherwise enroll in OMIP will be eligible for the federal medical insurance pool. When we look at this chart here, we actually see what the impact of the federal pool will have on the Oregon medical insurance pool. That top line it would have been our projected enrollment had the federal pool not existed. Now that we have the federal pool in existence in our state, that middle line shows the anticipated enrollment in the Oregon medical insurance pool. So you can see we're just really siphoning off a number of the new enrollment that otherwise would have come to OMIP into the federal pool. Some of the assumptions built into those enrollment projections, as I mentioned, about half of the new enrollees that would have otherwise come to OMIP are going into FMIP. FIAP will remain open for new enrollment through April 2011. Many of the high-risk individuals that are also eligible for a FIAP subsidy would be eligible for the federal medical insurance pool. We're expecting peak enrollment in the federal medical insurance pool to reach 2,000 by the spring of 2011. At that time, we will go to a wait list. When that wait list is implemented, individuals that are applying would still certainly be eligible for the Oregon medical insurance pool. However, they would have to meet the 6-month pre-existing waiting condition period, which I'll talk about the differences in those benefits a little later. That fifth bullet really pertains to the federal provisions of guarantee issue and the prohibition on pre-existing condition waiting periods that go into effect in 2014. Because of these federal provisions, we really don't anticipate a lot of individuals coming into the Oregon medical insurance pool in the latter half of 2013. They'll probably simply choose to wait until 2014 when they have guaranteed issue coverage and no pre-existing waiting periods. Now, in 2014, all of the individuals that would be in OMIP and FMIP will be transitioned or transferred to the exchange. We really don't know what this is going to look like because the federal government is actually the one responsible for mapping out what that transition will entail.